President Obama actually withheld more information, spent $36-odd-something million under the Freedom of Information Act to withhold information from journalists.
How did we get to Obama?
Well, hold on, this is why it matters. Because Donald Trump has not done that. Donald Trump has not done that.
It does not matter. We are not going to Obama to compare Obama to...
Is Obama a fascist?
I don't know.
Okay, time for the latest installment of Change My Mind. Unedited conversations with real people about controversial topics. As per usual, comment the topics you'd most like to see for future installments below. This week we made a special trip to Washington, D.C. and parked outside of the White House itself to deal with one of the most pervasive myths in the left's social nomenclature today.
I'm not saying that Donald Trump is a fascist.
Humanity is facing an emergency. A fascist regime has seized the reins of power in the most powerful, actually the sole superpower in the world.
There's a word for this, Ashley. It's fascism.
I mean, I think that Donald Trump himself is a dangerous neo-fascist in the making.
A flirtation with fascism in this country.
Now this government's hand in hand with another fascist, Trump.
I disagree. Do you? Feel free to comment and substantiate your argument below, but we decided to put all of this to the test. Unfortunately, turns out most people visiting the White House actually really like President Donald Trump.
I like him.
We love Trump.
I love you.
Thank you very much.
So much so, in fact, that it was hard to get a whole lot of people willing to sit and have a civil disagreement at all, though we did get quite a few as per the usual drive-by yellings.
No, he's a moron.
He's a fascist, he's a Nazi, he's a bastard, he's a cheater. I presume that somebody made a bribe and he's supposed to be allowed.
You can go on YouTube and search, and you will find so many things that comes out from his mouth.
Fire the liar.
Yeah.
Fire the liar.
But we finally sat down with a couple of people to have hopefully a productive discussion about Donald Trump, fascism, and accusations therein. As always, before you engage in civil disagreement, it's important to define your words.
What's the definition of a fascist?
I'm glad you've asked. Let's agree to start with a definite... You want to read that for me? That's from Merriam-Webster.
Political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation, and often raised above the individual and stands for the centralized. Reading that, I would say no, because I don't think he exalts the nation at all.
Okay. Well, hold on, continue. It's centralized?
Okay. Centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader. Well, I do think he's dictatorial.
Okay.
Severe economic and social regimentation. No. Forcible suppression of opposition, yes.
Okay. So there you go. You just made a few assertions there based on the definition of fascism, but we agree on the definition of fascism. I'm defining it as per the dictionary.
Where did that come from anyway?
Merriam-Webster.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. You know, so I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can here. So where would you say he's a fascist, Donald Trump?
I would say that opposition, that...
the suppression of opposition?
Right, the suppression of opposition.
Okay, how so?
Well, let's see, we just had the man's security clearance removed simply because he has vocally disagreed with President Trump.
Which man are we talking about?
The ex-general, or he was a military man.
Okay.
Or no, actually, I think he'd been the CIA director under Obama.
Okay.
And he's threatening to remove other people's security clearances as well.
Okay.
He also says the press is the enemy of the people.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, so can we take a couple of those now? Because you just issued two.
Okay.
So a couple of things. For example, probably the most severe example is he fired Comey, right? That was a big one.
Okay.
Fired James Comey. So we're talking about the investigation. I know we often go to the Russia probe or who he's granted security clearances to or removed. Let me ask you this. Is it within his constitutional authority to do that?
Yes.
Okay. So that wouldn't be an example of fascism.
No.
Your problem isn't with Donald Trump. Your problem is with United States law. Then you talk about, he said, I want to make sure I have your quote correct, that the press is the enemy of the people. Is that what you said?
I think it said oppresses in that definition.
Yes, but that was a quote that you used, right? That Donald Trump has said the press is the enemy of...
Yes, he says the press is the enemy of the people.
Okay. Do you know where that quote actually comes from?
No, I don't.
Stalin. Yeah, Donald Trump didn't say that. He
Right.
talked about fake news being the enemy of the public.
But is he not saying that right now himself?
No, he's talking about fake news is a quote that he's used, which was a leftist term, I'm sure you know. It was invented by liberals, which he then co-opted, being an enemy of people.
Is he not saying himself that right now, currently, whoever said it first,
Yeah.
is he not currently saying that the press is the enemy of the people?
That exact quote is a quote attributed to Stalin.
Has he
So I'm
said
talking
it
about
himself?
Donald
Am
Trump.
I misinformed? Has he
Yes.
not said
Yes,
it himself?
you are. But
He
and
has.
let's move on to.
I'm misinformed?
Yes.
I've
yes.
not seen his tweets that say the press is the enemy of the people.
No,
or his television
He's talking about
programs
fake
or
news,
his-
yeah. But let's move on again to, there's rhetoric, I think is important, and there's policy. So you've talked about the press, for example, and I think that's important. I think freedom of the press is very important. For example, we both agree if someone sought to nationalize the press, that would be a problem. That'd be a step toward fascism, right? Would we both agree on that?
Yes.
Okay, good. So we have some common ground there. What has Donald Trump done as far as actionable steps taken towards suppression of the free press?
Well, hasn't he tried to not allow people into the White House, into the press room? He's trying to dictate who's allowed to come in and not come in. That's a small amount of suppression. It's not a legal, huge.
Sure. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
He hasn't passed a law. He hasn't pulled out the police.
Sure.
But just in saying that, and
So back to the rhetoric.
right, the rhetoric.
So not so much policy, it sounds to me, you have a problem with the rhetoric.
That's correct.
Because his policies would actually fly in the face of that. Because you were the one who sat down, you believe he's a fascist. So if we talk about policy, I mean, President Obama actually withheld more information, spent $36-odd-something million under the Freedom of Information Act to withhold information from journalists.
How did we
He
get
used
to
the
Obama?
well, hold on, this is
Excuse
why
me.
it matters.
No,
Because
no,
Donald Trump
it
has
does
not done that.
matter.
Donald Trump has not
It
done
does
that.
not matter. We are not going to Obama to compare Obama
Is Obama a
to...
fascist?
I don't know.
Okay, but you said with such authority that Donald Trump is a fascist. If I may just continue along with my point here. Barack Obama used the Espionage Act not only to spy on, but prosecute more leakers, whistleblowers, and journalists than any president in history. The reason I bring this up is because Donald Trump hasn't done that. As a matter of fact, he's been more transparent. He's been more open to the press than the previous president. I don't think Barack Obama was a fascist. And I don't think Donald Trump is a fascist. You are saying definitively that Donald Trump is a fascist based on rhetoric. I'm showcasing you his policy.
Why would he say this then if he's so transparent and so open and so actually wanting the press in? Why would he Why does he say that? Why does he say
Because
that?
the press has an inherent liberal media bias and it's dishonest.
Oh, excuse me. Why? How do you prove that? What are the numbers? Where are the studies that this mainstream media is
Yes.
so liberal and progressive and communist and whatever you want to say?
I didn't say
towards
that.
the left
I
that
didn't say
they
that.
have this bias.
One thing, if you could do me a favor, I didn't put any words in your mouth. Don't put words in my mouth.
But you changed the argument, which I thought were talking about Donald Trump,
We
and
are.
you switched it over to
No,
Obama.
Do you understand the purpose for that, though? Do you understand the purpose?
No.
Okay,
I
so
want you to
said Donald Trump is a fascist.
No, but why are we talking Obama?
Because
why aren't
Obama
we
actively
talking-
sought to suppress the
why-
press, and Donald Trump doesn't. That's
And
relevant.
how do I know he hasn't? How do I know he hasn't?
Policy-wise,
When I
you
hear from
presented
his
no-
mouth that he does not like the press,
Yes.
and that they're lying, and that everything that they say is fake, with the exception of one news program.
Yeah. A lot of what they say, is fake. It's
And
unsubstantiated.
why does he also then retweet unsubstantiated claims from people?
See, again, we're getting back into rhetoric. Could you point me to any
I have no other
substantive
I have
policies?
The only information I have is what I can read and what I can see on television.
Okay.
And so whatever Donald Trump puts out as a tweet, that is what I know.
Okay. What do you read and what do you watch as far as television news?
I watch Fox and I watch MSNBC.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad you balance kind of two sides of the
Yes,
coin.
I do.
No, that's very respectable. And I actually appreciate that. I think it's more valuable than watching CNN that kind of plays down the middle when they obviously lean left. And what do you read?
Why do you know CNN obviously leans left?
Well, if you look, do you want to take Jake Tapper's example? Do you want to take a multitude of their reporters? Do you want to take a multitude of people who actually work at CNN who have direct ties to the Hillary Clinton campaign? But I don't want to get off on the beaten path here. I brought that up because you definitively said Donald Trump is a fascist, right? I'm not mistaken. That was your assertion.
Well, I said that looking at that definition, I think parts of it met Donald Trump, but
Okay.
not all of it.
Okay, so
He has not made laws, or he can't make laes, but he has not done things. He's not pulled up the army or
He could,
whatever
though.
forces he could.
He could make laws.
To suppress people or oppress people. He has not done that. He
Right.
has actually, because we don't have these laws, we've been working, I think, under the assumption that some behaviors, they were customs, they were customary. This is the way people customarily did things. Customarily, presidential candidates showed us their tax returns. So no, Donald Trump hasn't broken any laws in not showing us his tax return. He simply has broken custom.
What does any of this have to do with Donald Trump being a fascist?
Nothing.
Okay.
I think I was getting to a point of there are points in that where that with that definition that I think he pulls into fascism, but not all of it.
So you believe Donald Trump's tax returns, as it relates to him being a fascist, are more relevant than previous presidents in their suppression of the press?
No, I was using his tax returns as an
example.
As an example.
That's how I was using Barack Obama in his treatment of the press.
Right.
So I'm okay with using the tax returns. I disagree that would make him a fascist.
No, I didn't say that would make him a fascist.
No, I know, I understand. And I also didn't say that it would make Barack Obama a fascist. I was pointing out the active suppression and prosecution of journalists, which was unprecedented under President Obama. Same thing we're talking about. You just mentioned that he can't make this into law. Well, unfortunately, because of executive orders now and precedent, there are a lot of executive orders that have made law. Most egregiously would be DACA or Title IX that we saw from the previous administration. Whereas executive actions are simply meant to actually guide current laws and how they are interpreted. So he could. So a good example of fascism would be someone who would sign an executive order that would actively suppress the press. He hasn't done that. An executive order, somehow using the Second Amendment or changing it thereof for a free citizenry to be an armed populace, or signing an executive order, for example, that might silence freedom of speech through roundabout ways. He hasn't done any of those things. He has actually rolled back regulations, rolled back taxes, rolled back red tape. He's been less invasive into your life. So I just don't see how
less invasive into my life.
Yes.
And he can break laws and get away with it.
That's unfortunately been the case with look where you are. Everyone here is breaking laws. If you were to pass out tickets,
how are we all breaking laws here?
I'm talking about Washington D.C. There are no.
I don't live in D.C. I'm not from Washington D.C.
So he can. What laws would you say he's gotten away with?
The immigration.
Okay.
The problem at the border.
Okay.
That when people cross the border and try to apply for what are these? The people who are saying that they are being oppressed or have trouble in their home countries.
Yeah.
Or trying
refugees.
Refugees.
Yeah.
Right. And so he says he is saying there are no refugees. These are simply all illegal immigrants.
Yes.
And as they step foot across the border, they are now criminals.
Yes.
So is he not breaking, is that a law or is that simply a custom United Nations somebody put out and said you have to take refugees in? Is he not breaking laws?
No, he's not. As a matter of fact, that is United States law. Your problem would be with existing United States law. If you cross the border and enter this country illegally.
Excuse me, I'm not down there saying you can't come across.
No, there should be someone, but yeah.
No, I'm saying I'm personally not down there saying these people are not allowed to come across, but somehow
someone should be.
President Trump has his group of people down there saying they're not allowed to come across.
Right. Yeah, they're not allowed to cross. How is that fascism?
I'm saying, well, he's breaking laws.
No, he's not. He's enforcing the United States immigration law. You can't cross into this country illegally.
You're talking immigration law versus the problem of the refugees who are coming here and saying, I would like to apply for refugee status. I would like to prove that I've been.
Sure.
And they're not giving their day in court. They've had, I think there was something report of a woman who was, her day that she was supposed to actually be in court was on a plane being sent back to Venezuela or Guatemala or wherever, and the judge says, get her back here.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I want to make, because and I appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate you being civil. I think we're maybe missing each other here. Can you explain to me, someone crosses the, let's say, Mexican-American border, right? Does so without any verification, just does so in the heat of the night. Illegal immigrant.
Right.
What is the difference between somebody who does that and somebody who does it and seeks refugee status? What's the difference between an illegal immigrant and an undocumented refugee who comes here illegally?
I think if there were people who were sitting at the border trying to walk into, from what I understood, that there are sort of government spots where they could walk in there and say, I'm here as a refugee, please allow me in, those places were closed down. How do you make it impossible for them not to obey the law and then arrest them and say you disobey the law?
What law is he disobeying by not allowing illegal immigrants in here?
I tell you, I'm not sure if it's United States law, if this is NATO, if this is we sign treaties with people saying we are going to treat refugees in this certain way.
It's not.
What's not?
It's not. You said you don't know if it's a law. It's not a law.
What is it then?
So because what you brought up,
who protects the refugees? Who gave us this? That a refugee comes in and says, "Please let me in."
I understand where you're coming from, a place of compassion, right? These people are coming.
No, please don't go there. Please don't go there. We're trying to say that, to me, a fascist is a person who, I'm not coming from compassion. I'm coming from the position
That wasn't an insult. I understand that because I'm compassionate toward these people. But rule of law does matter. Your problem is not with the United States president.
No, it's with President Trump.
It's with the United States.
No, it's with President Trump, who is breaking the law and not allowing these people to come in.
No, he's not. He's not breaking the law. I think that's important. Again, there's nothing fascist about having borders. Again, if we go back to fascism, we're talking about autocratic control of government or a racial ethno-nationalist state. There's nothing fascist about actually enforcing current immigration law.
What current immigration laws? I don't even know what they are. Does anyone know what they are?
Yes.
What are they?
You're not allowed to come into this country illegally, and you should be deported if you do.
What about the refugees? I said I'm not talking about
if
the
they enter
immigrants.
illegally,
I'm talking
if they
about
enter
the
illegally,
refugees.
they're to be deported. They're
and
illegal
if
immigrants.
they are absolutely prevented from doing it legally, then what is that?
That is enforcing immigration laws.
That is not enforcing
Do you believe that it's a
immigration
right that
laws.
anyone who wants to come here should be able to be granted citizenship?
No.
Okay. So what's the problem with vetting
The
people who are coming here
problem
illegally
is
or sending them back?
You are trying to twist this around. You are not addressing the refugees. You're not addressing the fact that people are coming here from Venezuela or Guatemala or whatever South American countries they're trying to come in.
Sure.
Saying that I cannot stay there.
Yeah.
We will
Irrelevant.
be killed. Oh, you have such compassion, but it's
irrelevant to the law.
It is irrelevant
To the law, yes.
But it's very compassionate of you to say that it's too bad. That
Well, you just said
might
you don't
be
know what
killed.
the law is. And then I've informed you
Now
as to what
you're-
the law is, and then you said Donald Trump is a fascist. So I want to make sure that I understand this.
Sir,
you believe Donald Trump is a
you know what,
fascist
sir?
because he's enforcing
I love
immigration
the
law.
pressured speech.
Do you believe Donald Trump is a fascist
I
because
love
he
the
enforces
pressured
immigration
speech.
law?
You guys can just twirl stuff around and
I'm not trying to twirl
pressure
anything
stuff around and say all you want, pretend to be compassionate, and you're not.
Can I say one last
Goodbye.
thing? One last thing? Can we discuss
Goodbye.
one last
It's
thing?
very hot.
I know it's very hot. Let me see if we can find common ground on this.
I doubt it.
You doubt it?
I doubt it.
I think you might be surprised.
I doubt
Okay.
it.
I actually have a real problem with fascism. And I would be the first, I would be locking arms with you against fascism. If, for example, I
And
would
the
like,
man,
if, for example,
the man who probably did the most
can I
to
speak?
fight and for American rights and laws, Mr. McCain, Senator McCain, and the disrespect he showed that man. Excuse me. Goodbye.
Okay. Well, you didn't allow me to speak, but that's pretty disrespectful, I would say yourself. Thank you.
Turns out respect is a one-way street. By the way, before the next interview, this is a good time to let you know to hit the notification bell, because subscriptions don't mean anything anymore, or join Mug Club at louderwithcrowder.com/mugclub for the full 1-hour daily show. Not only to get the show every day, as opposed to just the clips, along with this wondrous hand-etched, hand-painted mug, but most of these Change My Minds and similar videos get demonetized the moment they're uploaded, so Mug Club is the only way to support it. $69 per year for students, veterans, or active military. Try it for a whole week before you join. Okay, let's talk to this next guy.
Alexi?
Yes.
Nice to meet you. Could you scoot in a little closer so we can get you on the... Sorry, I know it's hot, so...
No, don't worry about it.
Don't make me remind you about the scooching. All right, good. So, Alexi.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you know. You just watched someone else sit down and speak.
Yeah.
Let me just kind of reassert this. Sorry, I think I'm getting heat stroke. I have to burp. Is that okay for you?
Go for it.
No, it might just be throw up later on. This is unedited, so whatever we talk about is going to be genuine. People will see entirely what is discussed, not taken out of context. We're not doing the sound bites. We're not pushing for gotchas. Hopefully, productive discussion, rationalizing our positions. You've seen a lot in the media, particularly in the progressive left. They label Donald Trump a fascist, accuse him of fascism. I just don't agree at all. If you think I'm wrong, you're welcome to change my mind.
Well, what is fascism? What are they labeling him as?
Yes. Well, I think it's important to go to the definition. We have it here from Merriam-Webster. If you could read that, it'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I know what it is, but
could you read that out loud so we've got it, the whole thing?
Political philosophy, movement or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual, that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader.
It's a hard word. I get that one. Dictatorial and like dictatorial. Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Severe economic and social regimentation and forcible suppression of opposition.
Okay.
Or a tendency towards or actual exercise of strong autocratic or dictatorial control.
Yeah, this is the capitalized version, kind of the ism, and that's. But
yeah.
So do we agree on that? That's the definition of fascism.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't think Donald Trump is one.
Do you mind if I keep that open?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Yeah. So. Something that I feel is key here is the idea of nationalism.
Okay.
Because, it's kind of interesting because we just had Senator McCain just passed away.
Yeah.
Obviously, to a degree, a nationalist, somebody who, not to a severe degree, but somebody who feels strongly that they represent this country in a very noble way, and I think does.
Somebody who believes that this is a great nation and looks out for its interests primarily.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we agree on that term right there. You're talking about nationalism. Okay.
But there's a degree of nationalism that I think is frankly dangerous.
Okay. Yeah.
There's a degree of nationalism that puts yourself above other people.
Sure.
That because I think fascist. I really think nationalism is where people have a problem and they label it as fascism, because I mean you see it from the start. Make America great again, and now I personally really don't know when it comes to, there's so much going on in the government that my personal opinion fluctuates like by the minute.
Sure.
I don't really know what's going on.
Well, I appreciate that. Means that you're flexible.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing.
Right, but I mean, Donald Trump is a racist.
Okay.
Personally, the man himself.
What makes you say that?
Well, because he's allegedly used the term.
What term?
The N-word. He's allegedly used it. This has come out. Although the whole issue with that is with that woman is something else. Yeah. That's an interesting issue.
You've never used the N-word?
No. I've never.
Never sung along to Kanye's College Dropout and let one fly out your window?
No,
I have.
I haven't. Yeah. I don't really listen to hip hop music anyway.
Oh, really?
But
well, if you do, it's kind of hard to avoid. Otherwise, you can't do the sing along.
It is.
You can't follow the bouncing ball.
Right. That's different.
But that's alleged. So
right.
I don't want. So
that's
this is
alleged.
conjecture. But you just said he's a racist.
See, he is a racist. You see the way his there's the way he treats his employees in his personal businesses.
Okay.
So people of Hispanic descent, people who it has, I don't have the facts with me, but it has come out and it is factually correct that he's treated these people poorly. Not he himself, his business. Yep. The way he uses these people for his business and then kind of doesn't.
Well, can I address this? Because I know you're speaking a little bit in paragraphs, and I appreciate it, but I do want to.
Yeah,
so you said definitively that he's a racist, but then you just said he didn't treat people badly. His business may have treated people badly who happen to be Latino.
Right.
Do you understand, for the burden of proof, for you to first off label Donald Trump a fascist, which hopefully we'll get into, but a racist, the burden of proof is on you to prove that he personally is a racist and sees people as inferior because of their race. So we have examples of him personally appointing people like Ben Carson, personally working with people of Latino descent. You've brought up that his business has allegedly mistreated people who are Latino.
Yeah.
And you still don't draw the connection that that's because Donald Trump has sent orders top down because of their race.
I don't think
so. It is important with that label, you have some substantial proof. Otherwise, I could just label you a racist or a rapist with no proof, and I say, well, there's some evidence out there somewhere. It's you need to really, right now, I want to hold your feet to the fire. If you say he's a racist, I really would like for you to prove to me why Donald Trump is a racist, because all my criticisms of him, for example, the tariffs right now, not a big fan. His rhetoric, not a big fan. During the primaries, his attacks, not a big fan.
Yeah.
But him being a racist is not even on my radar.
So the okay, so I don't have definitive proof that he's a racist, but it is.
Well, let's throw that out then and move on to why else you would think he's a fascist.
So it is well known that he treats people poorly.
Okay.
He does.
People. Right now we're not talking about race, just people.
So he treats people who there was the issue with where he was acting in an undignified manner at a rally or at a press conference, I think it was, towards somebody with disabilities. He was there was that incident.
Are we talking about Donald Trump or Joe Biden?
Donald Trump.
Okay.
Yeah.
Joe Biden did it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think his was accidental.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Trump's was accidental.
Okay.
And then.
Can you, sorry, because again, it's about him being a fascist.
Right.
And you said yes.
Right.
How is Donald Trump a fascist?
Well, the reason why I think necessarily think he's a fascist.
Okay.
Exactly. But I think his personal disposition towards people is an indicator of where his I don't think it's easy for anyone to go into a position like President of the United States, especially somebody like Donald Trump, who and separate themselves completely.
Their character, what you're talking about. They bring their character into the office.
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me ask you this. So you're saying that you believe Donald Trump personally treats people poorly, and so you believe that personally
But he treats
he's
people.
a bad.
Yes.
But what about his policies that would be fascist? What would you consider amongst his policies, the actionable steps he's taken toward fascism?
Now this is why I'm not sure, because I don't necessarily think his policies are fascist, but I think.
And you can't call him a fascist by definition.
That's not true. I don't think so. I think because fascism is.
We can go back to the definition.
Right, so it's an
policies matter.
autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader.
Yes.
So it's severe economic and social regimentation and a forcible suppression of opposition.
Yes.
So I think his method of opposition, the way he puts down people who don't agree with him.
Yes.
Is he doesn't go after their political point of view. He goes after the person.
He does do that.
He does that. He goes after, and this is what people like about him. This is what is kind of not respectable, but it's kind of like
refreshing a little bit in a sense. Someone who doesn't use political doublespeak. It's okay.
Right, but the flip side of that is it's a completely invalid way of. It's not a valid way of showing somebody that they're wrong. It's going after the person,
I agree
not
with you.
going after their policy.
I certainly hope that you don't see me doing that.
I don't
do that
right.
at all, and I don't agree with everything
So,
Donald Trump does. And I do want to make it clear.
And to bring it back,
I don't agree with all of his rhetoric.
Right.
But again, rhetoric, calling the news some naughty names, is very different from active suppression of opposition. And the lady earlier got very mad when I brought this up. If we're going to call Donald Trump a fascist, then you would have to call Barack Obama a fascist. Because,
why?
Okay, so this is important as far as policy, right? Policy suppression of the media. Barack Obama spent a record $36-something million withholding information from journalists under the Freedom of Information Act. President Barack Obama actually used the Espionage Act not only to spy on, but prosecute more whistleblowers, leakers, and outright journalists than anyone in history. There's been no one who was prosecuted, spied on, wiretapped, acquired identity. There was one that happened, of course, with Fox News under Barack Obama, then Barack Obama. Donald Trump hasn't done that. Donald Trump has said some bad things, but Donald Trump has not policy-wise, or as far as action items crossed off the list, done anywhere near what Barack Obama did to suppress the press. And again, when you look at policies, you're talking about a guy, President Donald Trump, and this is just my opinion, what I see, someone who's deregulated, someone who's scaled back taxes, someone who hasn't tried to take guns away, but actively has said, I'll protect the Second Amendment, I'll protect the First Amendment, freedom of speech and the freedom of the press. We haven't seen that from anyone in the left. So I would certainly be more worried about people who stand on a platform opposing those things policy-wise than someone who says some, crappy things, granted, on Twitter.
So, and then this ties in with why I don't know if he's a fascist, because I've never spoken to the guy. I've never spoken to him before. I don't know. It's hard to know exactly what he believes.
Well, that's why I think it's important to look at substantive policy issues, which I appreciate you've agreed with.
But I think, and I don't think I'm alone in thinking that the way our government is organized is, if you look at it from this point of view, right? It's based on the notion of we're a capitalist society, right?
Okay.
So we are owners. All of us are owners. That's what we do. It goes all the way back to.
It's not just based on the idea of being owners. It's based on the idea of the citizenry being free. From a tyrannical government with inalienable rights as endowed by a creator.
Being free to do what?
Being free to speak, being free to practice religion, being free to engage in commerce. That's a portion of it, but that's not. I want to make sure that we're really clear. The government is not set up as though everyone is just an owner. That's not why it exists.
Correct. I think it exists. So I think it exists to keep that in check. And I don't agree with the way this government is organized, because the government's in place to keep things.
You're talking
like
about the government now, not
yeah.
Okay.
So it's put in place to keep things like it's to keep to keep people from gaining monopoly on any kind of capital they feel they have a right to work, to exercise their labor, and to own, and to accumulate wealth, and to live the American dream, to be prosperous and happy and healthy.
Sure.
So deregulation you're talking about, I don't think is a good thing. I think it can lead to fascism. I think it's something that, from a very basic standpoint, it's something that limits people. It enables people to.
But here's the thing: you're talking about something you don't like.
Right.
And I understand that.
Right.
But that's not fascism. Right. As a matter of fact, what you were talking about, more regulation. What you're talking about would be a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic, and also, by the way, historically, nationalization of a lot of industries. Right. So that's not fascism. I just think it's important because words matter. I've had people run up and say, Donald Trump's a Nazi, Donald Trump's a fascist. You may disagree with a lot of what he's done or said, but I haven't heard you disagree with a ton of what he's done. But that doesn't make somebody a fascist. And I actually see quite the opposite. Now, you say deregulation. You see, for example, supporting freedom of speech or maybe the Second Amendment. Maybe you don't see those necessarily as good things, but it is the exact opposite of what a fascist would do. The first step that fascists take is not let more people arm themselves. The first step that fascists take is not let's ensure that there's more freedom of speech on college campuses and businesses have the right to speak freely. That's not what a fascist does. Because we do have to get going here, and I do appreciate you taking the time. Let me I hope we kind of leave this on some common ground. I am concerned about fascism. I didn't support Donald Trump in the primaries. I didn't like his rhetoric, I would agree with you, on the media and libel laws. I thought, this is a real problem, especially as someone who works in media. Now, thankfully, he hasn't enacted any of he didn't even really suggest policies. He just talked about how media should